Hi, Daniel. Hi, Karan. How have you been?
Hi, very well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Uh, okay, so just for our attendees, I'll prefer to give a very quick introduction for you both. Hi, everyone. We have Mr. Karan and Mr. Daniel with us today. Mr. Karan is the founder and director of the Indian Institute of Digital Education. And we have Mr. Daniel, who is the founder and CEO of Equitech. At the risk of sounding very repetitive and mundane, but I would still like to ask, how has this pandemic been for you so far? How are you coping?
Karen, do you want to start?
You can go ahead. You can start. I'd like to actually hear from you first.
Okay. So, I think for probably all of us here on this presentation, the last, 12 months, 13 months, 14 months have been probably very unexpected and very different from everything that we have experienced. So in my case, I can just say my life before the pandemic was pretty much in airplanes, traveling back and forth around the world to meet our different clients and do different projects. In the last year, we completely switched to a fully digital workflow, which we already had, but definitely there was a lot of things that we still did in person. And I would say that, with all the things that we all learned, what I found remarkable is how much opportunities and how much enabling of things we have through digital technologies. I would say this is, if I look back, one of the really remarkable observations. Because if we imagined that the pandemic had happened, I don't know, let's say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when internet was not yet as fast as it is now, when video call technologies were not as fast as they are now, then we would probably had a complete different experience during this time. And I would argue even the meeting we have today, we maybe would not have had. Sometimes we have to think about that, because I can just say, for example, I'm also, one of my different roles is I'm also a professor at Pepperdine University for luxury strategy. And for the last year, we have been teaching fully online, all our classes. And I use the opportunity, because especially when you do a class on Zoom, I use the opportunity to invite a lot of guest speakers to my classes. And if I look back before the pandemic, as an example, we were just used that people would come to class. So for a guest speaker, for example, it was actually sometimes quite challenging to come. If I had someone, so we were in California, so if I had someone from New York joining, they had a 5 or 6 hours flight for a 1 hour presentation. And we took this for granted that our life is like this. And in my case, I remember I had maybe 5, 6 months before the pandemic, a meeting in London, which was basically just to get to know a potential client, and we met for coffee. So I flew from Los Angeles to London and then back for a coffee. This was the time before, and these would be things I would not do anymore today. And for example, my experience now was we had guest speakers from Australia, we had guest speakers from South Africa, several guest speakers from Europe, from Asia. And I think this is sometimes the exciting things that we forget, while we are sometimes, wishing we had our previous life back, that actually digital technologies give us quite interesting opportunities that we may not have even explored to the extent that we are using them now without this little push that we got.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think Daniel, I absolutely agree with you. Since I am a professor myself and I run a school myself, to be able to call like visiting faculty, invite them, and I'm going to invite you very soon to come and speak in my school. But to be able to invite,
it's a big pleasure.
But to be able to invite visiting faculty, it's brilliant. I actually think that COVID is an opportunity in adversity. And to me, it's a blessing in disguise, because honestly speaking, we've been, at least for me, I'm talking from a business perspective, we have been an offline school, maybe, one of the largest in Mumbai for our subject, which is digital marketing. But the beauty is that we were always just in the city. And with the pandemic hit, we were forced to go online. And today we have students from all across the globe. So we just started putting our ads everywhere, and we started realizing that, hey, we had a good product because we've been doing the product and re-engineering the product for the last 10 years. But we never thought new geographical markets. For us, a new geographical market was setting up a new school in a new city.
Yeah.
And that comes with expense, my time, blood, sweat, so many things. Today, for me, stuff is like click Zoom call. I have students from South Africa. I have students from, Nigeria. I have students from Nepal. I have students from Dubai. I have students from, UK. So I just think that finally, if you have a good product, now you have reach, because now you can spread everywhere. And I think COVID has been brilliant. The first 1 month I spent in uncertainty thinking what will happen. But I think whatever happened for the good, at least out here. So I'm actually extremely glad that COVID happened. And I hope just for schools and universities, this goes on a little longer and we have more online classes for a longer time. Because I'm used to this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you quite rightfully said that COVID is like an opportunity in adversity, and how Daniel said that it's just become easier to connect with people. You don't have to fly 12 or 13 hours for a 1 hour presentation. And I think pandemic kind of challenged our ability to adapt, even as students who were doing our masters. It was quite daunting at first to think about completing your final leg of studies at home. But then we all adjusted pretty well, not just us as an individuals, but even businesses too. So just carrying forward that point, I have a question for the both of you. So like luxury brands represent a sense of mystique around them, and they play with a double-edged sword of being approachable and being elitist at the same time. In this age of digital revolution, how can luxury brands maintain their identity, being exclusive at the same time accessible to the right people?
I think maybe I take this question first. I think we have to think differently about luxury. I think that what you said, about the exclusivity, it's not wrong, because if we look at something and describe something, we look at an object and we say, we look how it looks like, so to speak, and then we say we see certain things. And then, you look at the luxury good or like the luxury brand, and if you compare this with an everyday brand, like, I don't know, a bottle of water or so, then you definitely say there are less of them, and then it looks more exclusive. And then we almost automatically say, aha, because it looks exclusive, it has to be exclusive. So, and I want to warn a little bit that sometimes the true nature of something is not what it seems. And I think this is maybe something that is to keep in mind. So what do I want to say with this? Let's ask ourselves for a moment, why is someone buying luxury? Yeah. So maybe I ask you ask us the question. So what's luxury for you?
At a very ground level, luxury for me would be an elevation to my normal life. Maybe if I'm for water, if I'm drinking Bisleri, if I'm feeling really fancy, I might buy a bottle of Evian or black water if that's the trend. So anything that kind of breaks my routine and costs some amount of money to give me satisfaction is luxury for me.
Yeah, super. I think you just gave a very nice description. So let's use that your term for a moment. So if we say it's an elevation of your normal life. So let's think a second what this means. This means that luxury seems to be something that is not your normal life. Yeah, so if it's an elevation, then it's not your normal life, so to speak. So it's not just something that we have all the time, or let's put it differently, because sometimes we want to maybe use a luxury product all the time, but it's something that is not normal, so to speak. There is something special in it. And also kind of when we observed you talking, when you were describing it, you were smiling, you were kind of almost dreaming when you were describing it. So it evokes this very special emotion in us. And so if you think a little bit about this, I would argue this is more important than the term exclusive. You know, exclusive, something can be exclusive, but we are talking about something that evokes an emotion. And so when I speak about luxury, I typically recommend to use a different term. And it's not wrong to use the word luxury, but it can be misleading, because with luxury, everyone, you know, we close our eyes and then we think about something golden, diamonds. So you automatically go into a certain default. And that's sometimes wrong, because it's exactly what you just said. You just said, you know, maybe it's the better water sometimes. Maybe it's something that gives you something very, very special in a moment. You know, I had a presentation this week with a client, and I was asking them for, you know, special memories that they have, and that for them is luxury. And someone in this group told me they went to Japan, and he just wanted to buy for someone who was very special for him. He wanted to just buy something kind of small from Japan. And then basically so he said the gift was maybe roughly like 10 US dollars. So let's say not unbelievably expensive. And but he said what happened then was that the person who wrapped the gift in the gift wrap, he said it was the most beautiful gift wrap he ever saw. And then she left the store and she went somewhere outside, and in front of the store was a tree. And then she took something from the tree, like a leaf, and basically placed it on the gift wrap. And then, so he said it was the most gorgeous thing, and you could feel that something of this person was in the gift. And then he said to the person who he gave the gift to, maybe you just don't open the gift, because it's actually nicer the way it's packed and the story about it than the gift itself. And this teaches us something about luxury, because it is something where we actually create extreme value. If you basically buy something or enjoy something that gives you what you said, this kind of moment of elevation, what does it do? It just gives you extreme value in this moment. And so I think this is important to maybe pause a little bit, you know, and now come to your question and say, if luxury is maybe not so much only about exclusivity can be part of it, but is much more to capture maybe a special moment or to make a moment special. And if luxury is much more about an individual perception of extreme value, then there is absolutely no problem to have a luxury brand, for example, on social media, and induce a dream and share these moments. Because if you basically, as a brand, if you are able to provide someone with a special moment or with a dream, or to inspire someone, then you evoke those kind of emotions. And I would say, if I look at the last year, we can also learn a lot for the luxury industry and for luxury brands. So I observed maybe 3 types of brands in terms of their behavior. The first type of brands were brands that retrospectively you can say they did everything right. And what they did is they excited their customers. So for example, Dior is such a brand, Christian Dior. What they did was, I would argue, they fired from all cylinders. They they were very generous in the beginning of the pandemic. Was one of, maybe if you remember, was one of the first brands that used their production facility to produce hand sanitizers instead of their perfumes. So they showed a lot of social responsibility in the beginning of the pandemic, where others didn't do anything. Then they stepped forward. But then throughout the year, they did a lot of things to inspire their customers. And they used digital to a very strong extent. For example, they did a collaboration with Air Jordan and launched the Christian Dior Air Dior shoe in collaboration with Jordan. And this shoe was priced $2,000. And you had to sign up for the shoe online. So there was a sign-up list, and you had to commit to buy it. Do you know how many people wanted to buy this shoe for $2,000?
A lot more than
How
I'm
many people
imagining.
signed up? Yeah, how much would
Hun-
you imagine? A $2,000 shoe?
10,000.
Hundreds of thousands, 900 people, 950.
900 people? Yeah. 15 million people wanted to buy it.
Whoa, that's huge.
15 million people for $2,000. And I can tell you something. If you and everyone on this call, if you go online, maybe not now, but when we are done with this meeting, go online, and there's a place called Stocks with 2x, where you can buy and trade used luxury goods. So stocks.com. If you go on Stocks and you Google that particular shoe, you can basically see in all its sizes, and certain sizes. I saw one size, the largest size of the shoe was traded for $31 million. $31 million. That's value creation. And the whole hype was generated in digital. So, now you can say, is something that 15 million people want to buy immediately a $2,000 luxury or not? If we basically say, we take this maybe very old and I would say outdated definition of it has to be completely out of the world, super over decorated, so to speak, gold, diamond, silver, everything has to be on it, and only 2 or 3 people in the world have it. No, they're not. But you can see that if we think a little bit in a different way and say, if we are able to create something that is so interesting, so desirable, that really people want it. And why do they want it? Because exactly of your reaction, because they want to smile maybe a little bit more, because they want to dream a little bit. They want to get out of this kind of day-to-day routine. Then digital actually is a phenomenal enabler for this, because similar, Karan, to what you are saying, with your school, is if we basically said, let's say I can do the most beautiful thing in the world, and let's say I have a store here next to my house, and I sell it. To whom can I sell it? I can sell it to the 2 or 3 or 4 people that walk by the store. Absolutely. Or maybe 100 people. Or if I'm very lucky and I'm maybe in Paris on a very busy street, or in Delhi in a busy street or something, if I'm very, very lucky, maybe I can sell it to 1,000 people or to 10,000 people. But if I basically now see digital, or let's say the internet, as my place of commerce, so to speak, and not only the place of commerce, but the place of inspiration and the place of communicating, then I can even go further and really inspire many, many people. And if I inspire many, many people, then we are really creating a lot of value for a lot of people. So I would say it's not mutually exclusive. And I would also say that similar, Karan, what you were saying before, that maybe COVID opens our eyes a little bit in many aspects. I would also say that it makes us maybe think, or we should think a little bit differently about luxury going forward than maybe in the past.
So
you kind of really put a lot of sense to my question. Karan, would you wish to add something?
I would just think from an accessibility point, which is your question. I'd like to ask the audience, how accessible are luxury brands today to the world? You'd see all the luxury brands. Let's just take India, for example, right? You're going to find all your luxury brands in the top 6 metro cities. Maybe not even top 6, maybe in the top 4. But if I had to ask you, how many people outside these top 4 cities can still afford or want to feel luxurious or want these kind of brands? I'd say the number is much longer. Someone in comments is saying 2 years waiting period, right? But that's what I'm trying to say. When the question is accessibility, I'd say that before this, you've got to be traveling abroad if you wanted to pick up a piece of, a bag or a pair of shoes. Or you got to be in one of the main cities and then you can purchase. But technically speaking, there are way more people from smaller cities who still want to feel luxury, who still want to be able to buy such kind of goods. And I think that digital finally has now exploded it, right? Because now you can reach all these people which you were just not doing before because you had just your stores inside. Like, for example, I have been seeing, I've been getting, I have never seen ads from a luxury brand. Okay. But now, I don't know if the audience out here has seen this, but recently I've been getting bombarded with Louis Vuitton ads. Okay. And it's an ad which says an invitation to follow Louis Vuitton on Instagram. Is there anyone in the audience who's got this ad? It's like an Insta story ad. You swipe up, you go to their Insta and you follow them, and I can see some people in the audience saying yes.
A lot of them, yeah.
Right. So we're seeing these kind of ads. And the best part about digital, and when you ask me, how do I still make it accessible and exclusive at the same time? So since I am a digital marketer, one of my main jobs is to be doing really detailed, laser focused targeting. So targeting is something that I specialize in. And today, digital allows you to do that kind of targeting, right? For example, I can make an Instagram ad and my ad will only and only go to somebody who owns an iPhone. I'm just giving an example. Or my ad will only and only go to someone who's owning a Samsung S9, whatever's the newest phone in the market. I really don't know, right? But today you can be laser focused. If you think that someone who's owning, and I don't want to sound brandist, biased, any of these, but if you think that, okay, someone's owning a phone which costs less than $200, may not be able to purchase a Louis Vuitton bag, you can segregate that. You can target your communication on digital and ensure that, okay, I want to only and only target someone. Okay, I can give you an example. I want to target someone who has traveled internationally more than 3 times in 6 months. You can do such format of advertising online where you're choosing to advertise to someone who has traveled more than 3 times internationally in 6 months. Look at the kind of filter you have. So if there's someone who's traveled 3 times internationally in the last 6 months, we know that this person either works at a top-notch company, needs to travel, or at least has, comes from a decent economic background where he or she may be wanting luxury someday or the other. So I think that digital from its brick and mortar stores has increased accessibility unbelievably because there are so many more people than the people in the cities. B, I think targeting is insane because today I can target the right kind of people and my communication is so specific. I think because of these 2 reasons, I think that digital has also been a boon for luxury. Absolutely.
Of course. And given how passionately you've been speaking about digital marketing and the entire digital ecosystem, I feel it's quite safe to call you a visionary because in 2006, the importance of digital was very undermined to the extent that the brands did not really take that vertical seriously at all. What made you realize at that time that I have to build a school and I have to explore this uncharted territory?
So honestly speaking, when I used to talk about digital back in the days, nobody understood digital. Digital media weren't subjects. Okay. Nobody ever understood, okay, like if I ever use the word digital media, people would say, Facebook? Are you talking about Facebook? Because back in the days, there was something called Orkut or Facebook, and for me, I knew that this is going to explode. So there were lots of parameters, right? Like, for example, our country moved from 2G to 3G and 3G was moving to 4G, for example. At the same time, and then some few years later, we were having Digital India come by. At the same time, so fun fact, okay, to all the audience listening out here, I just want to ask you all a question. Does anybody out here know what was the price of internet data back in 2016 before Geo came out in India? Like for 1 GB of internet data, okay, on your smartphone, how much would you pay 5 years ago? Does anybody know? Right? I can see. So Daniel, we would be paying $4. Okay, we'd pay roughly $4 for 1 GB of internet on your phone. Okay, if 5 years ago, that is still cheap internationally. That is still cheap internationally. Okay, today India as a country spends $4. Okay, of $4 per month to get 1 GB of internet per day on your phone. Right, so we pay $4, guys, per month, and we get access to 1 GB of internet per day, which is roughly 30 GB of internet. Now, internationally, this price range cannot be achieved. We're the world's cheapest country when it comes to internet data, right? So somebody had to see these things. And when I was seeing all these discussions happen that, okay, we're going to reach such rates, I knew digital is going to explode, right? Digital India, we're the world's cheapest country when it comes to internet data. We're the world's second cheapest country when it comes to pricing smartphones, right? So with these 3-4 things put together, I was certain that putting a bet on this is going to pay me off someday or the other. Now, I never knew that horizon. Okay, I never knew that this will turn around in 5 years, in 7 years, in 10 years. But I knew that I'm putting a futuristic bet. And yeah, it's just worked out since then. Like, it's just a few meters I was putting a bet on, and it was a blind bet. And honestly, nobody in my family would understand what the hell is he doing, what is digital. And today, I think that's paid off very well. So thanks to some stars that I stuck to and some intuitions that I stuck to. But yeah, they were all intuitions and a little data that I kept. I'm a reader, and a little data that I kept reading, and that's what's led us to wherever we are. So yeah.
That's like a success story for all of us to read in our case studies, maybe in future masters to come. My next question is for Daniel. Luxury brands are valuable in themselves. Do they need any additional value promotion? What is that the luxury brands bring to the table for a sector which makes them so desirable and aspirational?
So, I'm just now reflecting a little bit. As you say, luxury brands have are valuable to themselves or for themselves. I would always, I would recommend to take a different view. The value of a luxury brand completely depends on how a customer sees them. It completely depends on how the customer sees them. So if Karan, you mentioned now the example of Louis Vuitton. So let's say, why would Louis Vuitton make these advertisings? Yeah. So if the value was automatic, so to speak, then they would not need to do that. So they have to. Every brand has to convince the customers again and again about the value proposition. And as you rightly said before, that you want to be elevated from the normal, this elevation from the normal has to happen again and again. So if a brand, I sometimes like to say, the most precise predictor for a brand not to be successful in the future is when they stop creating the desire. So when do they stop creating the desire? If they don't communicate with you. Hence, for example, if they don't advertise, if they don't excite you anymore, if they forget you, yeah. So I would sometimes like to say, think of a luxury when you buy a luxury. Or I use you now as the example, as you already educated us that it's about elevating. What is your favorite luxury brand? Maybe right a brand now, that you own something. What is your most valuable luxury, if you want to share this with you, for you personally?
I just made a very big dent to my savings and purchased my first luxury item, which was a ring from Tiffany, just like last week. Mm-hmm. So right now that's a prized possession.
Yeah, super. Why did you buy that ring? What made you buy this specific ring?
Not specific. I wanted to buy a piece of jewelry for myself, not something that my parents have given, but something from my savings. And given we are in Milan and we keep on talking about luxury brands and the products and how they are doing, I thought Tiffany would be a good start, like the first step to enter the world of possession.
And how did you hear about Tiffany?
I think there was always some sort of brainstorming which used to keep happening in our classes. The professor used to give us case studies and we had to make presentations. So we made sure we pick a different brand each time so that we get to know about them. So I think of all the brands we had picked so far, Tiffany was something that stuck with me. The idea, the simplicity, the Tiffany blue, how they daintily wrap in a white ribbon and give it to me. I have the box and the handbag, everything very neatly saved.
Okay, so you can see now something. So in this case, you can say the Tiffany advertising came through your your luxury class that you were exposed to, so to speak. But what did they tell? What does it tell you? You got a story. Someone told you a story about the brand, and this story somehow intrigued you. And because the story intrigued you, you made the choice to buy the brand. And in a sense, you know, and I could show this through my research, the value of a luxury brand doesn't come through the product. It's a very, very big distinction to non-luxury products. The value comes through the brand. And this means we have to remind and we have to build the value again and again. So imagine you had gone to Tiffany and they would have been not nice to you when you go in the store. Imagine they had been arrogant, they had been, they said, okay, you know, you have to have a Tiffany ring before we sell you a second ring, whatever they would have done. You would not have bought it. You would be very disappointed.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I would have walked out.
So, and if you, how would you now, so you bought this ring. What does the ring mean to you?
It will always be a symbolism of my semester here, that for my master's I went out and studied the world of luxury, and as a lifetime memento. So even the sales lady asked me, is that for some special occasion? I was like, just to have a piece of this time in Milan with myself forever.
So this means, in a sense, you just said it's like a life, something for your life. So you started a relationship with Tiffany. It's like a romantic relationship. You know, I've been writing a lot that you can compare the purchase of a luxury to a romantic relationship. It's exactly the same rules that apply. So you fall in love with Tiffany. And because you fall in love with Tiffany, yeah, and why did you fall in love with Tiffany? Because they offer you extreme value. It's very simple. They give you something that is so extreme in terms of value that you fall in love with them. And this means now, as a brand, now let's switch perspective and say we are managing Tiffany. What does it mean? It means we have to take care of you. If you ever go to Tiffany anywhere in the world and you love this brand so much and they don't take care of you, you will break up with this brand so faster than you can ever imagine. And when you break up, you will be not very happy. Yeah, exactly all the rules of a breakup will apply. You will be super, excuse me, I will use the word, you will be super pissed. And then you are going to talk to everyone about it and you will tell to everyone, don't go there. These guys are bad. Yeah, and because this happens, everyone that I ask, I do this exercise very often and say, describe a breakup moment with a brand. And then people get so emotional, they know every detail. And then I ask, how many people did you tell about this? Hundreds of people. And so, you know, it comes back to, and I just wanted to use this, and now I come back, I didn't forget your question. And sometimes I have to excuse that my answers sometimes tend to be a little bit long, but I think it's important to say there is no inherent value in a brand unless you feel this value. The same brand you can love or you can hate. If you hate it, you're not going to buy it. If you're indifferent, you're not going to buy it. So what do we learn with this? You have to, as a brand, you have to tell the story again and again. If your professor would not have told you about the simplicity of Tiffany, the blue box, the history, the mastery of all those things that is maybe unique to Tiffany, you would not have been intrigued. And maybe you had bought something from Cartier or from any other brand, but maybe not from them. But because he or she was able to tell you the story and you liked the story, you bought into the story. And then you bought a product out of the story. You didn't go there specifically for that product. You went there because there was the story of the brand. This intrigued you. And then you went in and then you got a part of the story. And so this is super important to remember, because if we think now about, you know, advertising or marketing a brand, the very first thing we have to do is we have to tell the story again and again and again. And then we have to tell the story not only when they are you cannot only think about this as advertising. Every interaction has to become a storytelling interaction. And I think the best brand to learn from is Disney. It's not maybe per se a luxury brand, but you can also argue it's a luxury brand. Because if you go with a family of 4 to a Disneyland, you probably will spend per day $600-700. So for many people, this will be a luxury brand. And there's one interesting thing. I've been in Disneyland in Tokyo. I've been in Disneyland in Hong Kong. I've been in Disneyland in Paris. I've been in the one in Florida and the one in California. I've been in the Disneylands, good weather and bad weather, in extreme heat and when it was cold and when it was raining. And guess what? There was something very interesting happening. Mickey Mouse always looks the same. He's never grumpy. It's unbelievable. It can be super cold and Mickey Mouse is the same. It can be totally hot and everyone else is sweating and Mickey Mouse is just there and dances and it's the same. It's unbelievable. So what can we learn from this? Is they're telling you a story and the story never changes. Every time, it doesn't matter where you go in the world, at what time, what the weather is, whatnot, you will not find grumpy Mickey Mouse. If it's grumpy Mickey Mouse, probably you're in a fake Disneyland. Then someone basically copied it. So you should probably leave. But if you're in the real Disneyland, he will always be smiling. And that is something that brands should remember, is they have to know their story. And then you basically use all different channels to tell your story. So now digital is very interesting. And I built on something what Karan was saying. You can now use digital really in a phenomenal way to tell your story. And actually, if we think about digital now, not just as a channel, but as an opportunity, I can tell my story in a much more consistent way than I can do it through a store.
Yes,
much
absolutely.
more consistent than through a store. Because if you think about a store, let's say you have a huge flagship store of take any brand. Sometimes you will have 60, 70, 80, sometimes 100 employees in the store. So each of those employees now is opportunity and risk. You can have someone who is absolutely phenomenal. They know the story inside, outside, and they can communicate the story clearly. And they can create the dream. And then you have another person, just for their personality, that maybe are not so able to tell the story, or they have a bad day. They don't smile as much on that day, for whatever reason. And then your story breaks down. So digital gives you a huge opportunity to be super consistent in telling your story.
Absolutely. I think the idea of having a romantic relationship and then making it digital could not have been put in any better way than you just did. Following on the same track which we are on, you said how the brands kind of build a connect with you by storytelling, and it's same as having a romantic relationships. So Madonna, the iconic icon, has been a muse to Dolce and Gabbana, and has been also the face of Jean-Paul Gaultier for a very long time. Now we see the rise of digitally born influencers like Michaela. So what is the thought process of these brands, and like what makes them choose the digital influencers over the real people? How does the romantic relationship happen then? This question is open to both of you.
So, so I have one point of view, which is that I think back in the days when you put Madonna out there, she was the biggest, right? Absolutely the biggest. But at some levels, that created ambition, that created aspiration. And today, I think apart from ambition, aspiration, also you need to create another emotion, which is like that I can achieve this. So can I, and I think that a lot of people need to get into the so can I do this, and which is why I think brands are moving from top-notch celebrities to individual influencers who have made it from somewhere, nowhere to somewhere, or from nowhere to somewhere. And I think when brands are doing that, they're giving it a more human touch. They're making it look like, okay, this person was nowhere, is here, and does have this bag on their hand. And that makes it way more, that makes it way more believable to someone else who's looking at an influencer online. And I think that that belief creates trust in the brand, that, okay, look, even she is using this brand, or look, even he is, putting on these shades. So I think that that belief, that trust, that so can I do this someday as well. And it's, because celebrities are 1 in a million, right? Like a pop star is 1 in 10 million, right? But an influencer is not in 1 in 10 million. It's today you can say 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000, right? And that reduces the odds, and that makes you feel more believable. And I think that's improving market share, that's increasing sales, that's increasing market size, and that's bringing more people in and making it more inclusive. And all brands want to be inclusive, even though they're exclusive at the same time. But I think that that's why brands are moving to influencers. And I feel that brands are, in fact, absolutely moving towards influencers now, right? Because they really want to create this, so can you do this? And they're picking influencers. Like, there's a very popular influencer who I went to college with, who was my batchmate in college. Her name is Masoom Meenawala. I don't know if you guys know of her.
Yes.
How many of you guys in chat, if you guys are from India, you probably know about this female. She runs an Instagram handle, Masoom Meenawala, Style Fiesta. So guys, I went to college with her. We were in the same class, and I used to sit on the back bench. She was second last bench. And back then, when she was starting influencing, she had her own blog called Style Fiesta. People made fun of her. Okay, people made fun of this influencer. And just yesterday, and she lives also next building. I mean, now she's married, she's moved out. But just yesterday, she crossed 1 million followers, and I can see people saying that in chat. And I remember that at the LV at Cannes, at LV, she was there representing India. I mean, she was there as an Indian delegate out there. So I just think that influencers are now taking it ahead, and I think that they're going to be the new sales bandwagons for their customers. So yeah, influencers it is, to make it more believable. But to them,
so much so that brands are kind of creating digital influencers for themselves. Like apart from Mikhail, I'm forgetting the name of another brand, and we just read about it recently, my memory. But even that brand was actually creating a digital presence of its own. So now that we have been talking about, we touched this topic of sales and marketing a little. So the next question is quite similar. Like the e-commerce sites for designer fashion brands like Net-a-Porter and Farfetch, and a host of others have proven that affluent customers don't mind paying the premium rates without the personalized attention that they would have gotten in any high-end brick and mortar store. So this stands to show that digital is as important as a brick and mortar. Do you agree? Like, how would the idea of having the storytelling and the romanticism, the relationship, and the idea of being attached to a brand would happen on a digital platform?
Daniel,
can I be a little bit Can I be a little bit provocative?
Yeah, sure.
By all means, please.
You just said you get the personalized attention in the store. How often did you really get the personalized attention in the store? We should sometimes ask ourselves the question, because we just, again, this is why I challenged before a little bit our thinking on luxury equals exclusivity. It's maybe just a description of what we observe, but it's not the cause. And a store per se doesn't mean you get the personalized attention. I think this is, and I want to highlight this because I think it's wrong to think the store is personalized, digital is not personalized. Think of what Karan was saying before. He was saying, if you target the right thing, if you get the right message, what are you doing? You're doing something very personalized. Because if I don't care about a handbag, so I'm not going to buy a handbag, let's say a woman's handbag for myself. So if a luxury brand now makes a lot of advertising for women's handbags towards me, I couldn't care less. They can make maybe an advertising for a man's bag, and maybe I listen. So we have to be, this is personalization, so to speak. This is customization of messaging. And I don't know if I really, reflect how often I've been in a luxury store and I leave the store and I was blown away by the service, really blown away in a sense. You think what you said before, you want to elevate your experience. Very seldomly, very, very seldomly. It happened a couple of times. There's some brands that do it really well, but most of the cases, honestly, I got a really bad experience in a luxury store. Arrogant, not very interested in really customer service, an attitude sometimes that the people who work in a specific brand may say, we are better than the customer, so to speak. I bought recently a very expensive car and I was completely underwhelmed by the service. There was zero luxury service. Nothing was luxurious about it. Absolutely nothing. It was worse than going to Starbucks, the experience. We just accept it because it's normal. Just scan, I invite everyone here on this call, scan how often you went to something, you did something luxurious. Maybe the product is luxurious. You leave the store with a beautiful bag, but was the service really luxurious? Was it really so personal that they really cared about you? I asked this week in a workshop, there was one guy that was wearing a Rolex. And I asked him, how often did Rolex call you after you bought the watch 5 years or 10 years ago? How often did they call you? And I was curious because Rolex never called me after I bought them. And he said, they never called me. And I have a couple of nice watches. None of these brands ever called me. They gave a shit. And I'm a bit provocative. They give a shit about you. So don't tell me that a store experience is a personalized experience. We just assume this because they're humans. So I would rather, recommend that we think in a different way. We have to think about the customer first. So we have to think about you, for example, let's take your Tiffany example. We have to think about you as a brand. And you may have sometimes the desire to access the brand digitally, and sometimes you have the desire to access the brand physically. For whatever reason, maybe you are let's say you are in New York on a vacation, let's say post-pandemic, you're in New York on a vacation, and then you see Tiffany, Fifth Avenue, and you want to experience it. Okay, this is your choice. But maybe you're not in New York and you want to experience Tiffany, or maybe after our discussion, you decide to buy a second ring, and then you access the brand digitally. So a brand should not distinguish, so to speak, about one experience is more personal than the other, but you said something very important. You have to have a personalized experience. So if we sell luxury, we have now to ask ourselves, is the experience in our store really a personalized experience? Do we give to Roma really the experience that makes her fall in love with us when she comes to the store, or are we just selling her something? For many brands, I tell you, because we are auditing brands all the time, for most brands, it's not the case. Only about 10% of brands that we audit really give you a good experience. So there's a huge opportunity to improve in-store. And now let's think digital for a moment. How does a typical digital purchase experience look like? You go on a website. On the website, you have a store. And frankly, one store looks like the other. Then you have a checkout process. You put something in the cart. One cart looks like the other. And then you basically have to put your email, your address, your telephone number, your credit card, exactly the same across every brand. Then you press buy, and then you get an email with a purchase confirmation, anonymous. Thank you very much, Roma, for buying this ring with us. And it will be shipped already. Then you get a shipping update, maybe a tracking update, and then you receive your ring, and you will never hear from them anymore other than advertising. That's a mistake. That's not using the opportunity. So we have to think digital has a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. The challenge, rightly, what you said is you don't have a person. You're in front of a computer. It is more impersonal. But we can be much more precise on messaging. And if we don't have this personal experience, or this human, let's call it human experience, better than personal, the human experience. And if we just agreed that for technical reason, a lot of the customer journey digitally will feel the same. As a luxury brand, now we have to think, how can we break out of this pattern? If we cannot avoid that my store looks from brand A the same like brand B, and my checkout process is the same as brand B, I better have a good idea on how to make this experience feel special and feel on brand. Only 1% of brands, I would say, that we audit is really good in digital. They're not good.
Right, of course.
They're not good. They use digital today as an advertising space, mainly.
Right.
They're not yet using it as what I call digital competitive advantage. Very few brands think about how can I use digital to excite my customers, to tell my story. Independent and not just as a sales platform. So yeah, this was my kind of long answer to that, but I think it's very important to sometimes challenge us, even our beliefs on the non-digital world, because if we basically, and this I also recommend, to all the students looking there, don't take things for granted. Never. Don't just think because there's certain conventions, because someone tells you the luxury experience in the store is great. Okay. Try it with your own eyes, experience it, and then you decide, is it really great or is it not so great? And especially when you work in a company, when you're in business and you manage a brand, always try to take this outside in view. Because what we see very often is that people who are managing brands get a little bit blind, because this is very human, because we also fall in love with our own brands that we manage. And then sometimes we don't see the shortcomings that maybe our service experience has. We know why we cannot do certain things. We know restrictions. And so sometimes we then accept the restrictions, but it's not the brand to decide what creates value, it's you. If you decide that this brand is not giving you value, you're not going to buy it.
Very well said. Of course. I mean, for a brand, it's the consumers who make or break it. And I think you covered all the bases quite brilliantly. So here, I'll take the liberty to give the chance to our attendees to ask you questions. I do see there are a couple of them coming. Daniel, Karan, are the questions visible to you?
Yeah. I see the chat here.
Okay, so we have the first question here, which says, I'm sorry, yeah. So it says, do the personalized attention in store depend on the geography? Like maybe in Japan store, people are more empathetic and warm, but maybe in France, people are, sorry, it's just lagging a little.
Maybe people in France sort of basically it's saying Japan has better people and France doesn't. That's, I think, the questions to maybe to Daniel.
Yeah. I think there's for sure always, first of all, people expect different things or are used to different things in different places. I lived in Japan for a couple of years, and Japan overall has maybe the highest amount of service expectation and service delivery across everything. Even if you buy something zero luxurious, you will get a service experience that will be mind-blowing. So this means in this context where you even get a hot towel when you go to a gas station and put gas in your car, so it's a place where it is all about service, 100%. So you have to be super service oriented. And if you take certain places in Europe, so for example, I'm German, and Germany is not famous for being overly service oriented, so to speak. So you are used to get a very little service in many places. So people may be already happy to get a little bit more than nothing, so to speak, from a luxury brand. So it's probably a different service experience. And then you have also different way how people are. So for example, here on the West Coast in the US, everyone typically is very outgoing. When you go to a store, they will always greet you with the first name, and it will be very informal, and they will say, how are you? Hey, dude, and so on. It will be very kind of formal. And in another place in the world, it will be a very informal, and another place it will be more formal, most likely. Yes, but I think what is very important is you cannot just rely on the way how maybe the services in a country. As a company, you have to set your own standards. And definitely the minimum thing you have to do is you have to have full clarity on what is the emotion that someone should walk out with. So I take your Tiffany example. How should you feel when you buy something from Tiffany? This feeling should not be different whether you buy your ring in New York, whether you buy your ring in Tokyo, whether you buy your ring in Shanghai, or whether you buy your ring in Delhi. It should be the same feeling. So the way how people are will probably be a little bit different. The way how they behave will be a little bit different. In some places, they will be a little bit louder, in some places less loud, but they have to give you the same feeling, if this answers the question.
Of course. Okay. Thank you so much. Karan, I think I found the question for you. This is related to the digital platform. Like, what percentage of revenue generation for a brand who's actually venturing into digitalizing its services? So, what is the initial percentage of revenue generation that comes from a digital platform? Is there a graph, or it's just a hit and miss?
I don't have an honest answer to this. What percentage of revenue should come in from digital? I think, especially for all brick and mortar luxury brands, digital is one of the mediums. So I'd say that it's pretty hard for us to assess what percentage of this came from digital. I haven't worked in luxury, so I don't know, but I've worked in digital. But maybe Daniel can answer that better. What percentage of revenue comes in from digital?
So I would agree with you that I don't like kind of cookie cutter answers where we give you one number and this is what you should do, because it depends on the brand. If you launch a brand and you decide that you want to be a direct to consumer brand and it should be all digital, it can work.
Yeah.
It can work nowadays. You can do it, and I see a lot of new brands coming in the market that are digital first and maybe have physical experiences just for very specific experiences, but the majority is digital. So this kind of brands will maybe be 80-90% digital, and other brands may decide for specific reasons that they may not want to sell anything digitally, and if they have good reasons for it, if it's their strategy, it may be okay to do that. But I would say, let's say, if you are a brand that are considering a kind of omni-channel approach, where you basically say, I want to be more or less where my customers are. And then first of all, it depends extremely on the region, if we ask this specific question. Because, for example, the most digital market in the world is China. There's no market that is more digital, and it's also the youngest luxury market. Sometimes I recommend, especially if you want to have a global perspective, you have to look at China. What happens in China is 5 to 10 years ahead to what happens anywhere else in the world. So if you really want to learn digital, look to China. Everything that is mainstream now somewhere else started there. And so in China, probably I would say today, you should be able to get at least, if you really want to be fully immersed with your customers, probably you want to have 40-50% of your sales digital. If you're outside of China, I would say that today, before the pandemic, roughly 10 to 15%, in some cases 20% of sales of brands were digital sales. So I would say you want to at least have this average ratio. If you simply say, okay, I don't have now a very specific strategy of I want to be only physical, only digital, I want to be more or less integrated, then to look into what the market is doing, at least gives you a good indicator. And maybe you want to be a little bit more digital than the market.
Of course, absolutely. In continuation to the question I asked Karan, I remember that you mentioned that how brands kind of send out ads by putting filters, like the ad should be seen by somebody who's been to abroad maybe 3 times in the particular year. And so, so the question which was associated to this was like, how much do luxury brands focus on behavioral science to build their business modules? Like if somebody's putting filters, so I think this is like beyond digital. A lot of science is going into it. So what's your opinion here?
I think digital is a lot about behavioral science because they're continuously tracking us and they're tracking all our behaviors non-stop, right? Like at any
Like
point.
the episode of Black Mirror,
Yeah.
like the real life.
Yeah, so digital is, it can be, for someone who doesn't know digital so well, it can be haunting when I show you what kind of behavioral tracking they're doing about us. But to be very honest, consumers, if you're into marketing, you need to think of consumer behavior, right? And it's probably the first subject you learn when you learn marketing. And luxury marketing has to have behavioral marketing. You need to be observing a customer's behavior. And today on digital, you can find metrics. You can find loads of different metrics, and you can use that to be able to target customer. And I said that before. So just to say it in one line, I think that behavioral, you need to be concentrating on behavioral science for customers to be able to market it. And thanks to digital, you can use them as metrics to advertise, communicate, message to the right kind of message, individual messaging based on different behaviors of different customers. And that's going to help you bring in your customers.
Thank you. So like I'll just put up a last question that's given by the audience, and it's quite contradicting to the benefits of digital marketing that we've discussed so far. So recently Bottega Veneta is like, it shut down all its social media accounts. And that was a very stark contradiction to our entire webinar that we've just been discussing. So the platform is open to both of you. I'll love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think I was just writing this week in Jain Daily a column about Bottega Veneta. So if you want to get my full view on the good and the bad, so to speak, and my take on Bottega Veneta, I invite you to go on Jain Daily and read my column from Monday. If you Google me there, you will find it, or if you put my name with Bottega Veneta, you will find that column. And my argumentation there is, I think it will put Bottega Veneta in strategic disadvantage. A lot of people have been saying this is a phenomenal move because everyone else is on social media, they are going out of social media. My take on this is if you decide to close your stores, good luck selling. So it may work short term because it's a brand that has been able to create a lot of, especially recently, a lot of hype. And so they have many influencers and so on that are taking a message on their behalf. But if you don't have your own social media anymore, this means now I'm completely dependent on third parties to make my message. Unbelievably dangerous. And I saw also here in the chat a question of what I think about their necklace kind of incident. There's a kind of consumer watchdog group, so to speak. They're called Diet Prada, which I also recommend you to follow. Yeah. These guys basically are tracking what luxury brands are doing all over the world, and if they find something they don't think is ethical, they will put it out. And they put out this week Bottega Veneta, and they were basically saying that they have a necklace or one or two necklaces that are kind of so simple in their material and in their design that they basically resemble something that is like a $5 necklace somewhere else. And my thoughts on this are that I think that as a brand, you have to know what really your identity is and how you create value, and how you are creating value, and how are you creating the dream to someone. And if you are in a category, so for example, and I wrote this in my column, I was, and I'm probably still am, I like the Bottega Veneta brand a lot. And there was a point where I was probably one of their best clients in US. I bought a lot of things from them. And so I know this brand quite well. But when I saw this necklace issue, I didn't like that. I felt like, I said to myself, $2,000 for that? I don't think it's right. And so I think as a brand, it's always a fine line, because we are never, and this is maybe a kind of final thought for everyone to take with you. You don't price for the product in luxury, because people don't buy the product, they buy the brand. Your ring that you described was a purchase into the Tiffany brand. It was not just a ring. And this is why you are willing to pay the premium for Tiffany. Yeah. So, and this applies to any product category. If you think about the Birkin bag of Hermes, that will cost you at least $10,000 if you ever are able to buy it. And many of those Birkin bags go for $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. Some are more expensive than a Rolls Royce. You can also question, is this ethical? Because I'm pretty sure it doesn't cost $500,000 to build a bag, even if the leather is very rare. But because of the story and of the history and everything that comes with the brand, some people are willing to pay that price. And so you can see the necklace as something similar. Nevertheless, I don't think that the necklace is a core competency of Bottega Veneta. I don't think that people typically buy the brand for these accessories. So these are more add-ons. And if you have something that is not your core and where it's not basically really the thing that you can do better than anyone else, and then you do something where people say, this is completely overpriced, at least you run a risk that then people question your overall pricing and your overall strategy. So I personally think that what they did is wrong. And I think that if I would advise them, I would a little bit more careful with the pricing of some of their accessories, or they have to make the pricing more understandable, meaning maybe better materials, more craftsmanship. If you just have a very simple product and you put on just the name and you sell it, I don't know, it's like think about just a simple white t-shirt and you put the brand name on it, and then someone would sell this t-shirt for $2,000. They would also think this makes no sense. So I think you have to understand as a brand that people don't buy your product, but they buy your brand. And this also means there's certain things where you just have to be reasonable, I would say, and things have to be justifiable. That's, I think, all I want to say on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Karan, would you like to add something?
I just think that it was a horrible idea to go off social media, because you got to be where your audience is. And if most of your audience is in the age bracket, 28 to 42 or something like that, it's an audience which is using social media actively. So going off social media for a brand like Bottega somehow to me doesn't make sense. You can genuinely reduce your channels of communication. You can stop Twitter. You can maybe stop some other platforms. You can zero down to one platform, but stopping communication where your actual customers are is not something I understand. The funny part is I was reading an article in October 2020, they were actually looking to hire a social media manager. And then in Jan, they go off. So something's weird out here.
I guess they could not fill the vacancy.
Yeah, I think they could not fill the vacancy. But attention is the currency of marketing. And if your customer's attention is on social, you gotta also be on social. So that's my take. Yeah.
Of course. Thank you so much, Daniel and Karan. Thank you for such a brilliant, informative session. And I really thank you for your time. I hope all our attendees enjoyed, and it was a very insightful session for all of them.